Welcome everyone to the Profitable Steward Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Sorensen. It's a privilege and an honor to have Dr. Shanon Brooks here as our guest today. Today is September 11th, 2025. And Dr. Brooks, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for offering.
You bet. So as we get started here today, we want to recognize the events that have happened recently here in the United States and the ripple effect around the world. But yesterday we lost a dear friend to those of us who are believers in the values of America and the Constitution. We want to honor Charlie and appreciate his life, the work that he did. And also, today it's not coincident. It's September 11th, 24 years, right, Shannon, since
the
attacks on America. And so with that in mind, we're kind of going a little bit off of what we would normally talk about on this podcast, where we talk about regenerative agriculture, profitability, production, soil health, all the fun things that we do here. We definitely do not want to sensationalize the events that have happened, but at the same time, we want to hopefully provide some meaning, direction, understanding, and what we need to do. That's my goal, what we need to do. Yeah. So let's start off, Shannon. Well, first of all, tell folks a little bit about you, where you're from, what you do, and then we'll.
I've spent the last 35 years in alternative education, involved in starting a couple colleges and just trying to really promote in a more full academic way those things that Charlie Kirk has been promoting for the last, over a decade. And so now I live in southern Utah. I live up in the mountains, and in fact, my background screen is from a little pond up not too far from my house, and we just love it here. But yeah, I can remember where I was on 9/11. Jared, I was in Cedar City, and we were running the first college that we started, and it was just couldn't even get your head around it at the time, and I'm not even sure it can today, but it was terrifying and confusing, and with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, all those feelings kind of came back for me, and feels so bad for his family, but it's a great loss to us, and so here we are talking about it.
Yeah. Well, I also remember, and pause just 1 second here. Yeah.
Got the horses in the mouse. Coming to the gate and asking it hold the gas when I was getting off to close the gate, and it tipped over it, and now it's not starting.
Oh, it's probably just flooded. We'll let it sit for a bit, and it should start. Okay.
Families, awesome, dude.
I know.
Fantastic.
Nothing major, just a slight mishap with the dirt bike while getting horses in to go ride and turn out cows. So that's hence his life. Okay. So September 11th, we'll go back to that, edit this part out, but September 11th, 2021 was the year, right?
2001.
Yeah, 2001. Yeah. So 2001, I also remember where I was at. Got up early and just like my boy Gabe ran the horses in. I jumped in my pickup to pull it down to the trail to load our horses in, and we were going to go ride and move some yearling heifers. Had the country radio station, local country station on from Elko, Nevada, and the DJ said there's something that's happened. So we don't understand exactly what happened, but we're getting reports that one of the twin towers, which I didn't even know what those were, had been hit.
Right.
And so I kind of sat there in the truck for a little bit, and the reports started coming in. And anyway, we, work and life goes on. Went about the day, got the heifers moved, and then that afternoon I had to spend quite a bit of time in the truck, driving and listening to, then I think it was the whatever radio station that normally, it was more conservative talk radio, would normally have like Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh on, and it was just the constant news feed of what was happening. And yeah, just remember being really shaken by that and thinking, man, is this, I don't know, is this the end? Is this World War III? And all those kind of thoughts and feelings. And even though it was on the complete other side of the continent, I don't think there was a person in the world who was not, completely primitive lifestyle that did not feel some of the effects of that event. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's been 24 years ago. What changes and effects did it have on you and the trajectory of your life?
Because of what we taught and where we were going, we were teaching the kind of things that helps prevent that kind of thing by American history and patriotism and those kinds of things, understanding government. So we were kind of already going in that direction. But the thing that I really noted was, and I did some research on this back then, and I still remember, after or during World War II, we had, blackouts in America, that kind of thing. The war never actually really hit America, but people were affected by it. You and I are too young to have experienced that, but there were shortages of food and materials, and people lived in California and on the East Coast would have to black out their windows and stuff so that enemy craft wouldn't have a target, that kind of thing. And I did some research, and for years and years following Pearl Harbor, there were events in America annually commemorating that and remembering that, and going through all that, and it was part of our culture. You go out and ask anybody, what is 9/11? And unless you went through it, there's a very good chance that our young people today have no idea what 9/11 is. And in fact, at the time that it happened, if you recall, there was a massive uptick in people going back to church and being patriotic. Flags were flying everywhere. Within, I don't know, 80, 90 days, church attendance went down, the flags disappeared, and almost never do you hear anything about 9/11. They'll talk about it for a second on the news, but it's not part of our culture like the Pearl Harbor things were. And I think there's a reason for that, Jared. And I don't know where you want to go with this, but I've got some ideas that we could cover. You tell me what you want to do here.
Yeah, let's jump into it. This really, little background. Yesterday, I knew that we had our regularly scheduled podcast, which comes out on the second and fourth Thursdays. We had a cancellation, and so we didn't have a guest. Found out about Charlie Kirk, and I thought, let's call Shannon. We didn't have you scheduled, but you're the man that needs to be here. And we don't know, why, but let's dive in. Let's dive in and talk about it.
I'm going to have to do some background to make what I'm going to say make sense. Let's back up a little bit. When I say culture, what that means is it's the culmination of arts and beliefs and customs and our social institutions and other human products, the customs and the things that we do as a society. It's also a set of predominating attitudes, how we see the world, what we think about, and that could be groups, organizations, or even a nation. And that's one of the things that makes a nation is that we have some shared customs. Christmas, Thanksgiving, we go to church, those kinds of things. That's custom. There's a thing that occurs, and we've been seeing a lot of it in the last 30 years. It's called deviance. If you look up the definition of deviance, all you're going to find is a state or condition that's very different than the norm. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, so what's the norm? We used to teach for years, we have taught for years, a concept of a national book. When you say national book, what we mean is, in America, for example, there have been a bunch of studies done, but back in the 50s and 60s, if you ask college students what the national book was, what is the thing that holds our nation together, it was always two things: the Declaration of Independence and the Bible. By the time we got into the 70s, that changed. It was now the lyrics of rock and roll songs. That was the book. And you could see that because the culture was starting to change. The beliefs and the customs, the things we did started to change around that time. By the time you got into the 80s, there was no national book. When you ask college students, what is the thing that binds us? People had a hard time coming up with anything because we had lost that much. Deviance is the idea that you stray away from those norms. You stray away from that national book. Now, every culture has their own national book. Even Nazi Germany had a national book, Mein Kampf. It's when you have a bad national book or no national book that your culture starts to disintegrate and your society starts to break down. And I believe that's what you and I have been seeing since 9/11, is a breakdown of our culture through deviance. We have strayed away.
Yeah.
The Bible has given us, and our American heritage and our Bible has given us our national book. And I have watched it for the last 35 years as our culture, as our society has moved away from those norms, we have become deviant. We have left those norms. And as we leave those norms, we are now reaping the reward or the whirlwind of following away, especially in the last 5 to 10 years with all the things that have been going on. I've got a few examples here that I can bring up. For example, dependence on government. In 1970, less than 1% of the population was dependent on the government for 25% of its income or more. Today,
Okay.
53%.
And so to qualify that just a little bit, is that meaning that they're working for the government or they're on some type of subsidy?
Yeah, they're on some sort of subsidy, whether it's Medicare or Medicare or something. But
Gotcha.
and SNAP, which is basically what
Food stamps.
Welfare food stamps, that has gone up, doubled and tripled in the last 10 years. So we've seen a real change of this American idea of do it yourself, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And we've gone away from that where we have a huge portion of the population dependent on the government. The diminishing of the family, the idea of what family means today. Now, I'm a bit older than you. I probably I've got 15 or 20 years on you. I'm 64.
Yep. Yeah, about 15 years.
Okay.
14 years.
You and I, the way we grew up, because I know your background and where you're from, the area that you grew up in was a little slower to degenerate than most places in the country. So you and I grew up on a very similar background. Moms didn't work when I was a kid. It was just started in the late 70s. Moms didn't work, all those kinds of things. We knew what a family was. A family was a mom and a dad, a male and a female with children. And the children were either male or female.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has been for 7,000 years of recorded history. But that has all changed in the last 5 to 10 years. Not only that, you have a lot of people in religious realms that you think the last bastion of family, who are very confused on this. You have a lot of good people who call themselves Christians who are very confused on this. And it's across the board, whether you're Catholic or Baptist or Mormon, it doesn't matter. A lot of confusion on this. Christians living together out of wedlock. That's deviant behavior. The whole point of wedding, of living together, is that you're married. That you've gone through a ceremony, you've committed your. We have lots and lots of Christians, good people, and they're not married, but they're living with the opposite sex. That's deviant behavior. We've lost our culture. They're not doing that because they're trying to, go against the norm. There is no norm. Many of these kids don't understand and have not been taught from a Christian perspective that that's actually bad. So they go to church on Sunday, they're a couple, and they're engaged in, what the Bible says would be fornication. The abolition of real education, what education was designed to be specifically, all these kinds of things. We have a civic breakdown that's like no other right now. We have kids going through 14, 15, 16 years in school who couldn't tell you the separation of powers, legislative, executive, and judicial. They can't tell you. They have no idea what our form of government is. The quality of education is down. They don't understand the global situation. So we have all this breakdown of this culture, and that's why we're seeing what we have today. And that's why you have somebody go out and shoot Charlie Kirk because of words coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, interesting.
That's my take on it.
I like that, and I appreciate that. So definitely we're seeing a degradation of society, of traditional values. And now the thing that comes to mind is, he's not the first assassin, right? I mean, there's Lincoln, there's Kennedy's, Martin Luther King. What is different now than then? Those who stand up for truth, they're a big target, right?
So yeah.
And I think that's probably been, the prophets in the Old Testament and New Testament, many of them were stoned because they spoke the truth, and it's not popular. So kind of compare and contrast the difference between maybe the last person who was assassinated, or whether that's Martin Luther King and now Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, well, if you go back, you'll see there's quite a bit of similarity between the late 50s and 60s and 70s and what we have going on today. What were the kind of things that we had back then? Well, we had the issue of racism. We had, the issue of free love. So, the whole hippie movement, the beginning really of widespread use of drugs, those kinds of things. Compare that, but you still had the institution of family. You had the institution, we had people that didn't, because of the racism. I think there's a good chance, for sure, Martin Luther King was a racist issue. We won't go into who actually did the assassination. There's lots of different theories on that, but it was a heated race time. Why was JFK assassinated? Why was his brother Robert assassinated? But we still had, we weren't that far into deviance. We still valued family. We still valued mom in the home. We still valued children. We only had two genders, those kinds of things. We were engaged in the Vietnam War. That was a big issue at the time. I was concerned that I was going to get drafted. I never did. I was not quite old enough when they stopped the draft, but I was about a year, 2 years away from being drafted. And I remember starting to be concerned about that. What do we have today? Uh, um, and during that time, we still had families took care of themselves. There was virtually no, government systems in place, those kinds of things. Today, we have a society that's very, very dependent on government. We have a society that family means almost nothing. Now, you and I come from scenarios where family is still a major part of what we believe in and how we live. We are not the majority, my friend. We are a
Yeah.
tiny minority. Um, and even within Christian circles, that concept of family is being disintegrated as we speak. So I don't know that it was much different. I think it was just I think it's an issue of degrees that truth was being attacked back then. It got pushed back against. Um, and and then now we see in the last 15, 20 years continual breakdown, very few Charlie Kirks out there. I
Yeah.
don't know how much time you spent watching Charlie, but he was pretty hardcore Christian, right? And
Yeah. And the cool thing about it is he, I understand what part of what his mission was to kind of be the bridge between this younger generation
yeah,
who maybe had some of these different values and not necessarily preach Christianity or any religion, but it was just truth to them and help them to see that, hey, the way that you've been schooled or taught up, or your culture has taught you this, there's multiple genders, family's not important, God is not real. He presented some different ideas and then let them choose.
yeah, yeah. In fact, he wasn't actually, contradicting the students. He was contradicting the universities because
Mm-hmm.
these kids are coming here with or without these ideas that are being seriously reinforced at these universities. Um,
Okay, right.
which I find it ironic then that you come to a state that's supposed to be so family oriented and so Christian oriented, and that's where he ends up getting assassinated. Now, of course, we
Yeah,
don't know who did it, and maybe the guy came from Pittsburgh. Who knows?
sure.
Um, but it was my heart just sank. Of all the places that he gets assassinated, it's in my backyard. I just that was so disheartening to me. Um,
Yeah.
this cultural breakdown, um, we've been teaching for 30 years. And it's really amazing to me. Over the years, we've had parents call about this or that with their students on campus or involved in the college. And 9 times out of 10, wasn't every case, but many, many cases, these parents were sending their kids to me so we could try to fix them, which tells me the deviance had already started in the home long before I came into the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think we're reaping the consequences of a culture that's disintegrating, and that's where we're at. And
Yeah.
I think it's going to continue to break down.
Yeah. So one of the things you teach is the cycles of history, um, based on different books, but particularly the Fourth Turning,
Right.
by Strauss and Howe. And so we've seen things like this before. You mentioned, the 60s, and looking back at all the things that were happening, they kind of pale in comparison to what's happening now. Um, but it was a shock. But those things had happened previously. So is this just another cycle in history?
Yeah, yeah. Are you familiar with oh gosh, Jonathan Cahn? Have you read any of his stuff?
Yeah, yeah. The Harbinger is the
Yeah,
one I'm most familiar with, which
right,
is really good about it directly talks a lot about 9/11, right? And then
right.
I've perused some of the other books and listened to some of his things online, but
Well, one of his books is called The Return of the Gods. And I read it twice in a row because it was so eye-opening. Basically, what he says is this: you've got good and evil. It's always been here. In ancient times, evil presented itself in names like Moloch, and all these different gods, and these goddesses, and all these different practices, and it was really bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then Christ came. And Christ, the whole point of Christ was to replace those beliefs and those gods with the real God. And as long as the Christians and culture of nations around the world embraced Christ and his gospel, those gods were relegated to, other places, outer darkness, whatever. But he said, and the way you maintain that is you have this culture or these norms in place. You keep Christ at the forefront, and then you have all these norms that are from the 10 Commandments and all these things, and you live your life those ways. And if you ever stop living your life those ways, these old gods get to come back in. And he walks you through how that's happened. And it's very unnerving. And it's, of course, the 60s, late 50s and the 60s with the hippie movement and all that. But all this transgender stuff, this is not new. This has been around for eons, for thousands of years. The priests of the old temples, they would dress half as a woman and half as a man, and they had all these rituals and stuff. But that all went away when Christ came. But it's coming back. And why is it coming back? Because we've let our guard down. We've stopped following the norms that God gave us. We stopped putting Christ at the forefront. I say we, meaning as a people, as a nation. And as we've done that, we've opened the door for these ancient gods, these ancient beliefs, these ancient practices, which all go back to evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've opened that door. And once you open that door, and he says, and he uses scripture to prove this, if ever you're rescued from evil and you're given the good, and then you don't follow the good, the evil comes back sevenfold. And that's one of the reasons why what we're seeing today is so much worse than what we remember from the 60s, is because it is. And you've got, you've got the uneducated electorate. At least most of the hippies back in the 60s were still fairly educated.
Yeah.
They didn't want to do anything with it, and they wanted free love and all that, but at least they were educated. Today, we have all that with our society and educated. The United States is way below where it should be in terms of global education with other countries. We're way behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in defense of that movement, in many ways, we probably, with our study of freedom and a liberal arts education, which you are a proponent of, we probably have a lot more in common with the quote unquote hippies than we do with the traditional conservative flag waving Trump voting individual who touts that they understand the Constitution and they've never read it.
Yeah.
Because they did pay the price, and they pushed back against the norm. And maybe in some ways they went too far, or maybe deviated, as you mentioned, from what the truth actually was. But I think they were trying to find maybe some balance. And the pendulum swung a little too far.
Right. I kind of like to look at it this way, and it's not fun or easy to consider what I'm about to say, but I think it's true. Back in the 70s and the 80s, that's when the gay lifestyle started coming in full bore into our culture. It had always been around, but it was always in the darkness. It was always on the fringes. And 70s and 80s, it started to become more popular. By the 90s, we're starting to embrace it. But God-fearing, flag-carrying Christians would be all up in arms about gay lifestyle. But when you actually go out and look at polls and things that show the amount of fornication and adultery that was going on by those God-fearing, flag-carrying Americans, there was way more of sexual activity within marriages, adultery and fornication, way more than there ever was gay lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
We see that a lot. We see men who claim to be Christians, but who treat their families horribly,
Mm-hmm.
but they claim to be good Christians, right? I'm reminded of Jane Eyre. I'm not sure if you read that book. You're a red-blooded cowboy, so you may never have read that girly book. But
No, but my wife did.
okay, there's a guy in that book. His name is St. John. He's a Protestant preacher, and he wants to marry the protagonist in the story here, Jane Eyre, and she won't marry him because he's so proud of his uprightness that he doesn't have any humility, and she's afraid that she's going to be treated poorly because of his version of what. So all I'm saying is if we actually lived as a nation by these, in fact, the book on the 5 American ideals that I wrote years ago, Georgics, Liber, Providence, Public Virtue, Liberty, and what those all mean, which are in depth. If we were actually living, the majority of us, our families, living by these virtues, which create a culture, we would not be at the place we're at right now.
Right.
This is
right.
What,
yeah. So talk a little bit about the difference from a liberal arts standpoint, traditional meaning of the word, conservative versus liberal.
Yeah, liberal actually was hijacked from the conservative, if you will, the conservative movement. Those who believe in family and free market economics and patriotism and borders and all that kind of stuff. 150 years ago, you would be your title, your political title would be classical liberal. The idea of being conservative that wasn't even talked about. And then in the beginning of the 20th century, the Democratic Party and such took that idea liberal and turned it into what we now think of liberal, right? But the idea of being liberal is the same idea of being abundant. So when we talk about the liberal arts, what we're talking about are the arts that maintain freedom so that you can do whatever you want to do. So liberal, abundant, freedom, liberty, it's all the same concept. And we've lost that. We've lost. In fact, we think that in America today, we think that if free market enterprise is or capitalism, I should say, capitalism is of God. Well, capitalism is just as evil as communism or socialism, Marxism, if it's used in the wrong way. There's free market economics and then there's capitalism, and they're not the same thing. And the founders were actually under capitalism at the time of the American Revolution. They wanted to get away from that economic system because capitalism, it's also known as crony capitalism, which means that there's more than one set of rules, and the top elite get their set of rules and everybody else gets a different set of rules. And free market enterprise or free enterprise means that there's only one set of rules. And that's what we fought a revolution for. We started with that kind of economic system, and in just a few decades, we moved right back to crony capitalism, and that's where we've been ever since.
Yeah, when you talk about different sets of rules, are you talking about bureaucratic law and regulations versus what might come through the traditional lawmaking system through Congress?
No, I'm talking about the financial institutions.
Okay.
There's a great book I recommend it to you. It's called The Tower of Babel. I don't have the author off the tip of my tongue, but if you go to Audible or Amazon, you'll find it. And it's talking about the precursor to the banking system. It was developed right at the end of World War I. Well, I'm not going to go into all that detail, but what it talks about is this idea of the financial system. So when I'm saying different sets of rules, what I mean is this. Jared, you go to your banker and you've got $1 million that you want to invest. And what's going to happen is they're going to pull you into a special room. You're going to have a girl there giving you a little massage on your shoulders. They're going to show you in multiple color presentation, 17 different options you can do, and you're going to be able to make money as much as 10 or 12% interest, which is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I walk into the exact same bank and I have $5,000 to invest. They're not even going to take me to a room. They're going to take me over to the edge of the counter. They're going to have the newest person walk me through, a badly photocopied double-sided sheet. I have 3 options, CDs included, and I'll be lucky if I make 3% interest. Different sets of rules. Why don't I, as $5,000 guy, have the same access to investments that you do? Because you have $1 million and I have 5,000.
Okay.
Different clubs, right? And we've been doing that kind of economic. We do that same concept of economics on a global level, and we've been doing it since about 1920.
Mm-hmm.
The first bank of this ilk was set up to manage the reparations from Germany to the rest of Europe. That bank has I'm trying to remember the acronym for the bank. You've never heard of it. I promise you've never heard of it. I had never heard of it until I started reading the book, which was put out, I think, in 2014. This bank is more powerful than the World Bank or the IMF or the Federal Reserve. All of those are parts of this bank. And this bank is not accountable to any government. It's not accountable. The way it's set up, no country can come in and control them. If there's a war, you can't mess with these guys' assets. It's amazing how they have this set up. That's the problem. And this is all that's the global approach to capitalism at a global level. We live it, you sell some cows, that's capitalism. These guys are doing this on a national level. Doesn't matter what war is going on. These bankers all talk to each other. They're not citizens of those countries per se. They're in the financial banking system, and they can do all kinds of terrible things with the power that they have. It's very phenomenal.
So this would coincide with the establishment of the Federal Reserve. Was that 1913?
It's a little bit before that, but it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
For the same reasons.
Interesting. Yeah. So here we are today. In the ranching industry, things are positive, really good. Cattle are at an all-time high. Input costs are high, but margins are still really strong. On the farming side, the majority of farmers are not making money this year. Their cost of production exceeds what the commodity prices are. Their farm debt is at an all-time high. And so kind of taking a step back and looking at things at a macro level, economic level, where are we right now? And gold is at an all-time high, $3,650 an ounce, I think is what I looked up this morning.
Yeah. Silver's coming up too.
Yeah. So people would say, well, things are good, but what the heck? I mean, I don't see that outside of some specific industries, such as right now ranching. We're in a mining community where in our little community, gold prices are good. The economy here is strong and it's robust. But that doesn't seem to be the picture throughout the United States. So where are we? Paint the picture for us for what the real economic situation is and what the drivers are behind that.
In 1961, an ounce of gold was worth 91 cents. Excuse me, an ounce of silver was worth 91 cents.
1961. Okay.
How many gallons of gas do you think you could have bought for an ounce of silver in 1961?
Couple, maybe 30 cents a gallon. I don't know.
Yeah. Today, an ounce of silver is $41. 91 cents to $41. How many gallons of gas can you buy today with an ounce of silver?
10.
Yeah, 9, 8, 9, 10, depending where you're at. California, I think they've got much higher
2.
prices. So let's say even 5, right? So that's pretty much holding its value. But what have we seen in the last 15, 20 years? Silver was decimated. It is just now. I bought silver at $36 an ounce 15 years ago. And it just
barely
came back.
broke $40.
That's right. The relationship between silver and gold is supposed to be somewhere around 15 to 20. So 15 to 20 ounces of silver equals 1 ounce of gold.
1 ounce of gold.
Historically, right? Gold at $3,500, that's not an indication that the value of gold has gone up, right? That's an indication that the value of our dollar has gone down.
Sure.
Because gold and silver don't change. And so I don't think we're in a good economic position. I think we're in a very, very unstable economic position. When we look at the economy, we're looking at debt to GDP. Our debt to GDP is about 110%.
Explain that for people who don't know that and what that actually means, debt to GDP. I mean, gross domestic product versus national debt.
Yes. So if you go to the bank and try to get a loan for your house, they're going to look at your income. That's your GDP. Okay. Nationally, GDP is basically that'd be our national income. And they're going to look at your debt load, and they're going to say, wait, you and Serena have got about 50% of your debt, or your debt is about 50% of what you make. Sorry, we can't give you a loan. We're at about 110%. It bounces back and forth, about 110% debt to GDP, which means we are way underwater. So I'm glad the cattle are going well today, but that's not a real reflection. That's a reflection on the return you're going to get for raising cattle today. But I'm not sure that's a real reflection on the economy, because overall, the average American is, if you factor in their home, which you have to, right? Most people say, I'm a homeowner. No, you're not. You're a mortgage. The average American is almost $400,000 in debt, the average American family. We have never had that kind of debt in this country before, ever. What happens if we get a really bad long-term recession or stagflation or something? We're going to have some real problems, because those mortgage companies still want their payments. And so there's a lot of things that we could cover right now, but I don't think we're in. I think it's a false flag economy. I don't think that we're in a good place, unless you're out of debt. If you're out of debt, different story.
Okay. Which in agriculture, that I personally know, I can't name on one hand the number of farmers and ranchers that I know that are out of debt. But hey, 2 weeks ago, we paid off all our debt, Shannon. It took us dang near 30 years, man. I think you told us this about 20 years ago. Work on it.
No, that's awesome.
It took us a bit. So we're the minority, and for different reasons. And
well, I blame it on Earl Butz. That's who I blame it on. He said, if you're going to be in agriculture, go big or go home. And that was
fence row to fence row.
Yep, that was a mistake.
Yeah, definitely. And that was post World War II, right?
Yes.
Kind of when we had that whole industrial revolution, retooling.
That was after Ezra Taft Benson.
Yeah.
So we're
Secretary
talking
of Agriculture.
Late 60s, 70s. Yeah.
Okay. So we've seen this shift. There's a lot of debt. on a national level. Let's talk more about what that means for you and me, specifically as business owners, entrepreneurs. Most of our listeners, I would say the majority are small business owners, small to large business owners. What does that mean for us? What do we need to do?
Well, we're at an interesting place because there's a lot of things happening that nobody knows how it's going to end up, like AI. We have no idea before the internet came on. I can remember back in the 70s when we actually had the technology. I just found this out the other day. We actually had the technology where you could talk to somebody on their phone, or you could see, a video of them, right? We had the technology in the 70s. We didn't use it until the iPhone came out. We now have, and there's no way, I mean, maybe you figured out, but I had no conception of what the internet was going to do, what home computers was. Even when I was typing in, the code in the very beginning, I had no idea. I could not conceive of what social media, for example, how that was going to shape our world, inform us, and all the good and the bad that comes out of that. We have things like AI coming on that is going to be, I think, transform that kind of thing, but times 10, times 100. There are economic prophets now saying that within the next 5 years, 90% of those people working today will not have a job. You'll still have a job because people need to eat. I'll still have a job because I don't need to be paid for what I do. But there's going to be some big changes. So in terms of agriculture, if you can stay alive and not get gobbled up by the government or by other big farms or by foreign entities, I think the future actually is stronger for folks in agriculture, because it's the farther and farther you get the general. When I was a kid, everybody knew how to can peaches. Everybody that I knew as a kid, when I was at home canning peaches with my family, they were at home canning peaches with their family. That is not the case today.
Yeah.
So, but unfortunately, we all have to drink and eat and sleep, and anybody who's engaged in that kind of stuff that still requires humans, I think economically, it's going to be very good for them if you can survive. And the only way you can survive, I'm sorry, people don't want to hear this, but the only way you can survive is either be you use a lot of ingenuity or be out of debt, because that's how they're going to get you. That's how historically, that's how people have always had their wealth and their inheritance taken away, is they got themselves in debt somehow, and then it was used as collateral and gone. So I don't know, Jared. I think your whole reason for your podcast, regenerative gardening and all that, I think you're right smack where it needs to be, unless they create a bunch of robots that can ride cows. I think you're going to be in a good shape. My focus over here, for example, in San County, is food security, trying to get people to raise food. Wow, nobody wants to do it, and this is a high LDS population area. Nobody wants to do it. So I think economically, I think stay loosey-goosey, wait and see what happens with the AI, stay in agriculture, stay out of debt. I think those are the things that we can do, and then sort of hang back and kind of watch. I mean, we had no idea what social media was going to do. We adopted it, and it was in everybody's home before we had any idea of predators talking to our 6-year-old daughters on their phones in the privacy of their bedroom. No one knew that was going to happen. I think what's coming is going to be 10 times more impactful and catch us by surprise than what's happening now. So keep your options open, and debt is the killer. Whatever you got to do to get out of debt, that's what you got to do. I'm so proud of you guys for getting out of debt. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and it's it's been a climb. It hasn't been easy. And there's not a formula, that we could say, here, do this, do this, do this, and here's going to be the outcome. Other than seek first for the kingdom of God, put him first, and seek to serve your fellow man, which is part of that. And really, I think that's the big shift for us that has happened when I quit running from my mission, and hiding it and saying, hey, you know what? God's put it on my heart to educate and to teach people. And I don't feel competent. I don't feel qualified. I don't feel ready. I don't feel like I have the credentials. I was still deeply in debt and preaching, hey, you can be profitable and be regenerative, when my balance sheet didn't show it. My income statement didn't show it. But I believed in the principles enough to face the potential humiliation and face the imposter syndrome and say, you know what? This is the right thing to do. So it's been a journey. When you and I met years ago, when I was started into my liberal arts degree, which is still ongoing. I still don't have a degree, but I think we attended one of the classes that you taught, and thinking back on like where we were at that time, young family, managing a multi-million-dollar business, still didn't feel like we knew what we were doing. But I think there was a stir inside my soul that said, hey, you need to learn some things. You need to do some things. And that's really when it started, and that would have been like 2006, I believe, somewhere in there, 2006, 2007. I remember being on video calls right during the middle of the recession. And that would be a big focus of like what we were talking about when the whole housing crisis happened in 7 and 8, when we were in an economic class with one of your colleagues and we were assessing like, hey, this has happened before. What does this mean to us? And how do we navigate these turbulent times? And I had no idea then why I needed to, study John Locke and Adam Smith and the founding documents. But like Steve Jobs says, you can't connect the dots in the future. You can only connect them in the past. And then only now is it starting to kind of the fog lift and see there are reasons why I needed to start then, that have prepared me for what we're doing right now. So
yeah.
I want to, thank you, Shannon, for being a part of that. Like you played a big role and influence in my life and in our family's lives because of doing similar things. I remember your own journey of, working with Cleon's Galzin and traveling miles and miles and sleeping in your car and doing things that probably didn't make sense to maybe even your immediate family. I'm sure people probably questioned you when you were pursuing what your God-given mission was, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah. So now with the benefit of being involved in liberal arts education, mentoring, I'm sure on the thousands of students personally, and who knows how many people you've influenced through your writings and teachings and podcasts like this. What's your perspective now? Why did God lead you down this journey?
Yeah, I don't know that I can answer why. This is what I've been involved in the last 35 years is so remotely different from anything my family had ever been involved in, or I feel like maybe I had some sort of something in the pre-existence to do with it. I don't know. But we're at a time now. I'm in an interesting place, Jared, and I won't go too deep into this, but where the things that we've been teaching for the last 35 years are almost not valued at all. It's happened more and more and more as we've gone down this road of this cultural demise. less and less people value this. Now, I think that will come around because as we start to reap the consequences of this, there'll be another generation that says, okay, we know what we don't want. How do we do it? And then I can step back in and we can start doing things. So it's interesting to see that. And of course, you see that historically too, as you read, the fall and decline of the Roman Empire by Gibbon. You see some similar things. You look at other nations that have come and gone. And of course, we believe that this nation is blessed beyond all other nations. But we also believe in some religious histories that if you don't live up to your privileges, you lose them. They're taken away. And I really don't want to see that happen for my kids and grandkids and great grandkids. So I don't know. I'm glad for the journey. If I hadn't done what I've done, I would have got a job somewhere and done the corporate thing, and who knows how many marriages I'd be through at this point. I'm still on my first one, but that life is not real friendly to married life. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're grateful for the influence that you've had. And I just looked on my bookshelf. I've got a copy of this book right here by Shanon Brooks. It's really, really great book. Tell us a little bit about this book and specifically who it's for.
Yeah.
It's for.
Yeah, that book is to teach is to show Americans that we are no longer Americans and what American means and how to get back to it. That's what that book is about. Now, when we get off this call, I'll send it to you, Jared. But I've done a rewrite of that book.
Okay.
That's 300 pages, and guess what people do with a 300-page book? They use it as a doorstop. So I've taken that same book, cut it down to just the vital 5 American ideals. It's 150 pages. And I have sat down with several different groups over the last year and a half and gone through this 150 pages word by word. And it's amazing to me. The reason I do that now is because I realize one of the reasons people aren't reading that book, American, is because about half of it, they have no idea what I'm talking about. We've gone so far from our moorings of the 5 American ideals that when I talk about them, nobody knows what they mean. When I talk about Georgia, people don't know what that means. Liber, providence, public virtue, even liberty is a concept that most people don't get. And so by cutting it down to 150 pages, I'm able to take people through. I took a group just a few months ago, 85 people in kind of a dining hall. And we spent 10 hours going through this book, 5 hours on each day, having the people read it. I would stop, explain, read it, stop, explain. As we're getting partway through, people were starting to say, what does this mean? And what does that mean? These are grown adults who almost never acknowledge that they don't know what something means because, that's shameful. It was impactful. I've had lots of people from that group call me back, want me to come to talk about this again, those kinds of things. So I'll send you. And this cut down version is in PDF format, so there's no cost. I'll send it to you, Jared. You can share it with whoever you want to.
Okay.
But I'm telling you, the solution is until we go back to our norms, which are founded in the Bible, in the Declaration of Independence, and then the American culture, colonialism, that it is the beginning of who we are. Until we go back to that, we're going to continue to have a degradation of society. There's no stopping it. The very norms that this nation was founded on, the 5 American ideals, those are what keep us from degrading. Those are the norms. Deviant behavior, and in terms of being an American, deviant behavior is anything other than these 5. When you live your lives outside of this, society will crash. And we have example after example after example of societies leaving whatever norms they had that started them out, and they became wealthy, and then they left those norms and they disintegrated. This isn't the first time this has happened. So anyway, I'll send that to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you will, I'll put it in the show notes for people that are listening or watching the YouTube so that they can download it. And that's wonderful. Appreciate that. The book is great. And I assume that's still available if they want to buy the full 300 plus pages.
Yep.
Okay. What's next for you? What's your focus at this stage in life for you and your family?
I'm focusing on family. I've got my mom that I'm now the primary caregiver for, and so she's got dementia. So I take care of her, and I've got grandkids on the way. Jared, I have 2 grandkids coming in the next, one in about 3 weeks and another one in about 8 months. So that's exciting.
Very good. Very good. Are these your first?
These are my very first. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is exciting. You get to be a grandpa. Wear the grandpa hat.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm working on local government, trying to make San Juan County a food security area, and working on family. That's trying to get closer to my God. That's it.
It's good thing to do. Well, if you could only take 3 books with you for a prolonged whatever desert island type situation, aside from scripture, what would be those books that you would for sure pack with you?
Oh boy. That's a hard question. There's so many. I think I would take writings of Marcus Aurelius. I think I would take, believe it or not, I think I would take Jane Eyre.
Would you?
Yeah. And oh my gosh, the third, I don't know. There's so many. I'm looking at a little bookshelf right. I don't know. I'm finding
That's a hard question. Huh?
I'm finding myself spending more and more time in scripture, but I think if I was in a situation and it wasn't just me, but there were other people there, I'd probably take like the 5,000-year leap. It's so foundational, and we've gone so far away from it that I started out this journey in my mid-20s with the 5,000-year leap, and maybe that would be a good thing to end with.
Yeah, that was one of the very first books that I read when I started on my educational journey. Long after, traditional college and serving a mission and well into my career in ranching. That's when my liberal arts education really started, and read that book and have read it multiple times since then. So I would second that. Jane Eyre, man, I guess I better read that one.
I think you should. It's a great book on how to be true to yourself and how to have a good relationship and what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been awesome. Anything else you feel like you need to share or want to share with this group?
I would just tell the folks in your organization that I think you're a good leader. I've known you for, well, at least 20 years, Jared, and been to your place many times, and you've been out here. And I so appreciate you. You're a man of God, and you're a man of truth. I've watched you take new information and not just go, "Hey, that's really awesome," and mean it. But you've taken a lot, pretty much anything that I've ever had the opportunity of knowing first about something that I shared with you. You've taken it and you turn it into PowerPoint presentations and go teach it. And I mean, it's just fun watching you. So you're definitely the guy to be leading out and sharing with other people. And I hope they value the kind of leadership that you're providing, because it's very important.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. This is a labor of love. The business Ag Steward that my wife and I started about 3 years ago was the expression of a lot of what we learned from you, from other mentors, including Bud Williams in the livestock realm, attending multiple classes, reading lots of books, and the School of Hard Knocks, the experience that can only come through making mistakes and failures. So it's a privilege to be able to serve this agricultural community. And I do have another question for you. I have no idea when we hit publish on this who's going to listen. But I would say most of the people that listen have an agricultural background. And it's an international audience. We can track that on YouTube, and we can see, there's people from all over the globe who tune in and watch these videos. And that's great. We're so grateful that you're willing to do this. We're talking about America and American. That does not mean that I served my mission in Colombia, that a Colombian is any less, or that a South African is any less by any means. These are true principles. So beyond the principles that America was founded on, specifically boiling it down to many of the founding fathers were involved in agriculture, right, Shannon? What is the role of agriculture in preserving freedom?
Okay, and to answer that, I have to go back to the first of the 5 American ideals, and that is Georgics. Georgics has a long history, 3,000-year history. It basically means grow food. It goes back to the most fundamental needs of human beings. You've got to grow. I think everybody should grow food. I don't care what you do. Professional baseball player, a cop, a lawyer, a doctor, a guy chasing cows. Everybody should grow food. Everybody should grow, 30, 40, 50%, 100% of the food you eat. That is the essence of liberty. Liberty is being able to take care of yourself, not depend on anybody else. Now, there's nothing wrong with a community. You grow beef, I do honey, I do bees, so I trade beef with honey for you. That's great. That's voluntary. But when it comes to governments, the way that we maintain liberty and the way that we are dignified as human beings, that's where this is no longer American. This is I don't believe in global citizenship, but I do believe that all human beings are equal in the sight of God. These principles apply to all human beings. The way that you dignify yourself and become the most you can be is being as independent as you can. And food is the very first thing of independence. You can live quite a long time without clothing or without shelter. You don't go so long without water and food. And so when we get these things figured out and we don't go into debt and we stay independent, that's where true liberty comes in. And it doesn't matter if you're in Colombia. I served my mission in Chile. It doesn't matter. Philippines, it doesn't matter. Human beings are human beings, and we reach our potential by being independent and living via liberty. And the way you do that is you take care of yourself.
Well said. Very well said. And it just brings to mind, that most, I think I can safely say most farmers don't grow food.
Right.
They grow an energy source that is not even suitable for human consumption.
Right.
And so here we are expending lots of dollars, paying to play, subsidized oftentimes through either 3 main things: government subsidies, equity that we built up over the years, and not paying ourselves. And we're not even growing food. We're just growing something that is going to be bid at the lowest price possible. And when it comes down to it, could we grow the food to sustain our family? I think farmers are in a better position, but it means we've got to get out of our tractors and work the land as our founding fathers did. I'm not saying go back to a horse and plow by any means. Like
Right.
we can utilize the technology, but it's a different model than the Earl Butts model. Get big, get out, plant fence row to fence row, sell a lot of volume and pride yourself on how much yield you have, but don't ever tell anybody, are you profitable or not, right? Because most of us aren't.
Well, it's even more than that, Jared. It's the idea of, fine, you sell a bunch of alfalfa, you had a $5 million a year, but you can't eat that cash. What you should be doing is, instead of, fine, do cash. I have no problem with cash, but also take a half acre of your 50,000 acres and grow food on it, and have some rabbits and some chickens and, a couple of beef cow you hold out for yourself, and provide for yourself. Be independent. That's what Georgic means. It means be independent, be self-sufficient. When you are self-sufficient, nobody can control you. Right now, you make $5 million growing alfalfa or whatever, you still have to go to the grocery store and buy that garbage they call food.
Mm-hmm.
You see this in the beef industry. And so until we become independent, doesn't matter whether you're a doctor or you're a rancher or a farmer, if you're not independent, meaning you do everything you possibly can for yourself without depending on government or corporations or whatever, until we get a society at that level, we're gonna continue to be in bondage, and we're gonna continue to be in debt.
Well said. Well, we appreciate that, the importance of independence. It's a big part of what we do here at Ag Steward. A big part of that is getting your own house in order, being profitable. All the fun things that we talk about here: soil health, managing working relationships. And when we coach and consult businesses, generally they come in because, hey, I'm not profitable, I'm bleeding, we've got some huge issues here that we need to deal with. We always are going to look at the next layer down, and we're going to say, okay, what's the cause? What's the root cause of this? And I think a lot of times it is that there's some misalignment. What was that word? It wasn't dissonance. What was the word that you used at the beginning here?
Deviance.
Deviance. There's some deviance between the mission God put us on here on earth to do and what we're trying to do just to make money.
Right.
When we can get those things a little, then there's a lot better flow, a lot less resistance. It's not going to be easy. You know that, right?
Right.
Like, yeah, the adversity, I'm sure you could write books on how the challenges you've faced as you stepped into your mission, but we appreciate that you're willing to do it. And that would be our encouragement to anyone who's listening to this. Find out what God wants you to do. Give your whole heart to doing it. And if it's in agriculture, that's great. We'd love to support you and help you with that. So, Shannon, it's been great. Thanks for being willing to, on short notice, like literally a couple hours notice, jump on here. And
well, it's my pleasure. And it was, the timing was right. I was in deep contemplation over the Charlie Kirk situation. My heart and prayers go out to his family. And
likewise.
We lost a great son of liberty today with his assassination, and that's straight up what it was. It was an assassination. He was murdered, and we need more people. And you may not be out on the big stages like he's doing, but you're talking about the same stuff. It's very, very important, and what you're talking about goes back to my concept of protecting the culture in the national book. It goes right to the core of it. You're talking about production of food. You're talking about agriculture. And yes, we may have gotten off track on some things, but it's not that hard to grow a garden. It's not that hard to get, especially if you've got a bunch of land, I know you guys grow a bunch of stuff, but I just encourage everybody, grow food, grow food, grow food. It will change your life.
Amen. Well, thank you, Shannon. Thanks everybody for listening. Tune in. These come out regularly. if you're listening on the podcast, we also have it on the YouTube channel. Today we didn't share slides, but many of the presenters do, and so check us out there. And we hope to see you at the next event. The next event that we have is October 16th and 17th, multi-day virtual summit with some of the industry leaders in regenerative agriculture, focused on being profitable and regenerative. Those things must be in concert. We must work together, must be in alignment with those two. So that's going to be our focus. Catch us on that one. You'll see the information coming out on that soon. So God bless everyone, and we'll catch you on the next one.